Welcome to the talk through research seminar is by Professor Pratik Parikh from Wright State University, Dayton. I've known Pratik for maybe about a decade so far when he was working in the area of warehousing. And over time, he has also diversified quite a bit and he's looking at retail space these days. Apart from it, he's also working in the area of healthcare. That's one of his other areas. He's got numerous awards. He's also on the board of the Informs TSL. He's the vice chair-elect for the Facility Logistics Special Interest Group in TSL. He has tons of awards, including the Faculty Advisor Award. He also got the President's Award at Wright State University, earlier Career Achievement Award, and of course he's a PhD from Virginia Tech in 2006. So without much delay, on to you, Pratik.
Thank you. Good. Still morning, right? Yeah. Good morning. Late morning. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it. It's always nice to have a decent crowd with doctoral students and a few faculty members. Then you can always keep the tempo of the talk at a much higher level. So what I'll do is I'll introduce myself a little bit, one slide on the university so you kind of get to know what we are, and then we'll hop into the actual talk, which kind of is an interesting one. It's been funded by NSF. I'll tell you a little bit more about it. But people with OR background, operations research, with marketing, psychology, and in general, anybody who is more of a modeler will probably enjoy it. We actually have a team of computer scientists, psychologists, and IE people, industrial engineers, working on this project. Okay? So just to give you an idea, that's what we're looking at. This is actually a Walmart, but a Walmart in the US, gigantic, okay? And this is what I'm going to talk a little bit more later. This is our university, just to give you an idea. I actually sit in one of these buildings here. This is the engineering building. And that's how the big one is, okay? So just to give you an idea, Devjit introduced me nicely. I actually come from Vadodara, but it's been 15 years. I left for the US, got my master's, and then eventually a PhD in industrial systems engineering. I worked in industry for 2.5 years. It was actually a supply chain position. So my team was working with Kroger. It's a very giant retailer there, Walmart. I personally work with T-Mobile, the cell phone service provider, on very interesting projects in warehousing and supply chain. And then when I got this opportunity at Wright State, I said, you know, I can't miss it. I wanted to be a faculty myself. My father actually retired as a faculty from MSc University of Baroda. My interests are in applied OR, so I'm a modeler myself. I enjoy more in terms of I see a problem and I want to model it rather than here's an abstract math model, let's go solve it. Does that make sense? So there's a modeling thing and there's a solution piece. I'm more on the modeling side. I have done some work in supply chain personally, and I'll talk a little bit about retailing today. And half of my work is in healthcare. So the US healthcare, if you're reading anything about it, it's pretty interesting, I would just say it that way. Lots of money spent, but still not ranked very high. So it's very weird. And being there now and having gone through and seen my son go through some of the emergency rooms and how things were handled 7 years back, I said, you know what, I need to be one of those change to kind of start making things better. So I actually have a courtesy appointment in surgery. So I work with surgeons on healthcare problems. But today we'll not talk about healthcare, okay? Here are some things that I have done. Most importantly for those who are in the operations research management science, you probably know the Inform Society. So I'm the vice chair, and moving on to 2 years consecutively, I'll be the chair for the Facility Logistics. SIG is the special interest group. So that's about me. And again, I don't know how things are, but when I do my teaching at Wright State, I love interaction. So if it's me talking, it feels like it's very awkward because I wrap up quickly. I don't know. So please stop me and ask me questions right in the middle. We'll make sure we'll finish in 1 hour, okay? So that will be my responsibility. Please ask me questions. Anybody knows these two guys? The names are right there, right? Orville and Wilbur. So the university actually is named after them, Wright State University. We are in Dayton, Ohio. So if anybody knows the map of US, this is the map of Ohio. Columbus, the capital, Dayton is right there. And there are about 4 or 5 cities in Ohio that you want to know of. There's Cleveland there, Columbus, Cincinnati, and Dayton. And Dayton is actually the birthplace of aviation, because these two gentlemen come from Dayton. They had a bicycle shop, and then ended up creating a control system for the aircraft. The university is very young. It's about 50 years. 50 years, according to standards in education, is a very, very young. It's like a toddler who's just about walking. Okay, not even a teenager. It's a toddler. So there are 3 universities around Dayton, especially one which is UD, 125 years old. Now that is a mature school, an adult. Make sense? Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech, 100 plus, 125, 150. So 50 years is nothing. Okay? So, but it's fun because in 50 years they've gone from a commuter school to a research university. So my position is actually 50% research and the rest is teaching. So I expect my promotion, my tenure, everything is aligned with my research, not necessarily teaching. Because it's an engineering program, right? So writing grants is like a big thing. I have to maintain a lab of PhD students and I have to keep funding them. The university doesn't fund them. I have to fund them. So I have to write grants to fund them, right? So it's pretty interesting, pretty challenging. About 18,000 students and growing. 230 degree programs, undergrad, graduate, and PhD. So I teach in the, if you look at this previous slide, pretty big terms here, biomedical, industrial, and human factors. I'm in the industrial program, industrial and systems engineering program. So I have my own research lab, 4 or 5 students at any given point, mostly PhD. So that's about me, that's about the university. Now about the talk. Any questions thus far? No? Still like me? Don't want to leave? Okay, no, so this is not a class, it's a research seminar, but you're free to sleep, don't snore, right? You're free to talk to me, right? But please feel free, okay? If you don't like it, leave. If you have questions, please let me know. I'll be very interested in sharing ideas that we are working on. And if you feel like, okay, this is all US, how about in India? I'd love to know more from you, okay? Because I've left the country for 15 years, so I don't know much. So I'm interested in learning how you feel about it. So just as an initiator, this research was funded by National Science Foundation. And I don't know what would be the equivalent here in Department of Science and Technology, DST, so same here. We have a collaborator, Dr. Kevin Gu. So if anybody has taken Dr. Devjit Roy's warehousing class or similar, you probably have learned about fishbone designs and those kind of things. That's a person. My PhD student, she just graduated about 8 months back, so this was her dissertation topic, and we kind of took it further. I have a professor from psychology contributing, so you'll see a lot of psychological terms here thrown at you, and then I'll show you a couple of videos about a virtual environment that we are testing our models. So one of the things that we are doing is, we just don't build models in my lab, we want to go out and test it out. So that'll be very nice, because then you say, okay, not only I have a cool model, it has some assumptions built in, but now these assumptions are okay because we tested it either live as a pilot or in a virtual environment. So I'll show you the video at the end of the talk, because you first need to know what I'm doing before you can see what we are testing. Make sense? Okay. So as an acknowledgement. So now, I want everybody to read that and do as it says. Picture your favorite store, and then think what you see from the entrance of the main aisle. You might like it, and you might be able to picture it better if you close your eyes. Just close your eyes and just start thinking, what was the last shopping trip you made? And as you entered the store, what did you feel, see, hear? Do it. It'll help. I'll ask some of you. I mean, I'll not pick you, but whoever wants. Anybody has felt it, thought about it? Yes, ma'am.
Especially the window display.
Window display, okay.
And when we enter, the fragrance, the beautiful aroma of the store.
So olfactory, the smell. You know, it's all about stimuli, right? The 5 stimuli. Anybody else besides the smell? Anybody else? Yes, ma'am. The music, okay. The audible part, okay. Anybody else who walks into the store and does beyond those 2 stimuli? Any other stimuli?
Mostly you see the counters, billing counters and shelves.
You see. The first thing is you see. Before even you smell or anything, you see. Because you have to walk in, right? So visual is very important. Now, if you say, okay, visual is one of the top 2 things that you would experience as you walk into a store. I wouldn't say the topmost. Then what? What do you see now when you walk in? Billing counters or cashiers? Anything else? The crowd, the number of people, anything else?
The Indian context is way too crowded stores these days.
Stores are way too crowded, okay. So I'll continue with that thought, and I'll show you some examples of how we, or at least I experienced in the US in some of those stores, okay. So here's an example of a store named Target. It's a chain, it's a huge chain, and that's their symbol, Target, bullseye, right? So that's how the store is, okay. 1 or 2 entrances, there is this outer pathway, which they often call in retailing or marketing literature as racetrack. Okay? And then there are these cross aisles, so they let you cut through, and all the departments are on the boundary side or on the inside, and then you can also cut through the aisles. But most people will start. So if I go to Target, my typical tendency is I'm going to go in and hunt for the thing that I want, and then maybe cut through and hunt for the thing I want, and maybe take a route out, right? Typically, that's how you do it. And if I'm in a mode where my wife says, go and get, well, back then, now my kids are beyond diapers, but go get diapers. So I know where the diapers are because I know the store and I have the map. So I immediately go there and out. So I'm a shopper who wants to do a quick trip. Versus my wife and I, when we go out for shopping over the weekend, we have an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old, we are more on a leisurely walk. Let's walk through and not only buy a few things, but let's see some new things. It's not about buying just a few things, it's also about the new things. You see the thing? Here's a Walmart I just showed you, and here's a typical thing. So this is one environment which is about, it shows you the specific department location. But then that department has to have racks in it, right, on which you shop, or gondolas. Here's an example of a Walmart where it doesn't show a department, but it shows the layout of the racks. See this weird stuff here? I don't know how clear it is. It's angled. Angled. Depends how you see it, angled or orthogonal. Some orthogonal meaning 90 degrees, right, and angled. So that is what we see when we walk into a Walmart. This is how, let me put it, this is how the retail designer or the retail store manager sees it. Here's my layout, the blueprint. That's not how me and you see. We see this. You walk in and that's your vision. That's what you see. You don't see anything outside and you don't see the top. These are top views, correct? These are not top views. These are straight views. That's how you see the world. And so your world, the way you see, is not the way the designer built it. You see the discrepancy now? Do you see the gap? The designer built it for, here's how they should walk. And I, as a human, I'm going to walk based on what I see like this or what I see like that. Make sense? That's where the work started. What the shopper sees is not what the designer might have built for. And what the designer is expecting from what they build, they're not getting their objectives maximized because they did not look at how the shopper sees the world. Making sense? Okay. So this is where our research started. We said, can we connect the two things, how the designer builds their stores versus how the shopper sees, and can we connect them and build new models which takes the human psychology, human vision, marketing, along with layout, which is a very standard topic in facilities, and merge them. And if you merge them, what happens? We don't know. So we started looking into it. So that's where my PhD student started her work 5 years back, and we got funded 3 years back by NSF, right? So I want to show you a couple of videos. Okay, so here's a trip to a nearby store and what a human eye sees. Okay. This is my PhD student who is now, of course, graduated, it's a former. She actually recorded her own shopping trip with her cell phone. I'm going to rewind it, okay? This is what you want to see. Okay? See on the right side. Okay? Look at the right side. Do you see something weird there? Do you look at the angle of the racks? That's one thing, but so that's the promotion, right? That's called an end cap in marketing and retail science. That's called an end cap. But do you see the angle of the racks here versus the angle of the racks here? That's what she saw. Well, we saw. Me and Kevin Gu, we saw first, and then she kept seeing it more and more, and then she started recording these videos. So most of the aisles are, as you walk, actually the way the chairs are. As you walk, the chairs are like that, right? 90 degrees. That's how the racks are. And so there is a certain phenomena when your human vision, when it goes and intersects, it only intersects certain pieces, and that's what you see. If I turn them, then you might see more. And I'll prove to you that you will actually see a lot more. But there are certain angles where you see a 200% more. And there are certain angles which are worse than 90. You don't want to do that. Okay? So that's one of the things that we saw. Let me see if I can show you the other one. Here's what a human eye sees, just a simulated version. So here's that small I use that. This is the human, and that's what they see. Okay, it's actually not a rectangular box, it's more of an oval at the end, ellipse. So that's 90-degree racks, and that's how much you see. Unless you really move your head here, but still it's 90 degrees, so you're not going to be able to see more. But every store, almost every store, has it aligned at 90 degrees. That is the whole idea, that when they do what they think they are right, but that's not how a human sees the world, well, there is a mismatch. Do you see what I'm saying? So if there is a mismatch, then what? So what? Well, I do care, because as a modeler, as a researcher, I want to make sure that I, as a shopper myself, want to have the best experience. Do you buy that? I'm very selfish, right? I'm a shopper. I want to have the best experience. Now, I'm the modeler. I want to get my objectives all matched up, maximized. So I'm a shopper one day, and I'm a modeler the other day, and I want to match them up. Make sense? Well, then how do I do that? That's the question we asked. Making sense? Okay. So for the next few minutes, I'll show you very high level the concept. We'll not get into the math. Will you avoid that? But just get you the concept. Okay. This is about 5 years of work here compressed into an hour talk. So we'll do what I can. So just as a background for those who don't know much about retail facilities, this is a book that is kind of a pretty nice book, kind of lays out everything about retailing. So retail facility design requires merchandising, what you want to sell, assortment planning, and so on and so forth. And then there is a backbone. So I always like to call it store planning as like the skeleton of your body. You need the skeleton, and then you need the flesh, which is the product. Then only a human body is made up of, right? So you need the skeleton, you need the flesh. I don't worry about the flesh because that's not my domain. That's product assortment. I'm not into that. People in marketing, retailing know more than I do. But I'm on the skeleton side. Can I produce a better skeleton so that more flesh could be put on it? Rather than making it bulky, more efficient, agile, or visually appealing. That's the word we want, visually appealing. So that's what we are focusing on, okay? Circulation. Other areas are right here. So very narrow, very focused, but the fundamental basis. Why is this room here is what we're talking about. Why is it not somewhere else? Okay. All right, so just to give you an idea, some characteristics of retail facility layout compared to manufacturing. Everybody teaches you this in the class. If anybody has taken any OR or facility logistics, they'll always talk about layout in manufacturing setting. Well, let's minimize distance. We know the flow of materials. It's reasonably known ahead of time. Demand is unaffected by layout because demand is external, right? Demand is external, and you're manufacturing it, so it's not affected. The layout doesn't matter. Your objective is to satisfy the adjacencies. So the paint should be next to this one. Chemical or hazardous department should be away from another department, like call it regular working assembly section. And so there are adjacency requirements. Certain have to be close together and certain have to be apart. Flip it, and that's your retail store. You really don't care about distance. It's all about money, sales. Talk to any retail manager. They don't care how long you walk. They actually want you to walk longer. Have you ever known that? Well, I don't know about here, but in the US specifically, they put milk, and those stores are gigantic, by the way. It's lots of walking. Milk is on that diagonal corner, and eggs are on that diagonal corner, or dairy products. You go buy milk only there, and bread might be there, and then you walk all the way on the back side. Now, when you're in the back side, they took the effort to first take you to the back, so you started seeing stuff, and then you have to come to the front, so you'll see stuff both ways. So what are you going to do? You have 5 items to buy, and when you actually go to the cashier, you have how many? Probably 10, 20. That's called impulse buy. And they get their sales on impulse buy. Impulse is on impulse, right? On a certain reaction or a stimuli. It was not planned. And so that's what they get. Travel paths are not known. I may walk any which way and you may walk any which way. Demands can be influenced by product placement. I put a nice product here and you'll probably walk to it. So I can entice you. That's what the retailers do. They entice you to go deep. Okay, so those are some criteria. And so the idea is retail design requires new models. Okay, so we'll talk more about it. So here are the objectives that we started looking into. We skimmed through all the IEOR, industrial engineering, operations research. Then we looked at retailing, then consumer behavior, then marketing, and kind of finally filtered in saying, here are 6 or 7 really important ones, okay? Sales productivity, how much sales you can generate. Shopper time spent, the more time they spend, the better that is. Actually, it's a wrong phenomena. It has been proven recently that the more the shoppers spend time, they get frustrated. They will likely not come again. I will not go. It changes with generation, right? People become very impatient, and the millennial wants everything on the fingertip. So if you don't get it, guess what? You're not going to go there again. Not like my parents or myself. If I don't get it, it's okay, you know, maybe next time. And I give them the benefit of doubt. The new generation doesn't do that. So there is a difference, right? Shopper satisfaction. You don't like it, you're going to not go there. Once you don't go there, you become loyal to somebody else. The retailer has lost you forever. Make sense? Stickiness is a concept in marketing. I'm sure you guys know. You want your customers to stick to you. Even if you get a little bit of profit, not a whole lot, it's okay because in the long run, you'll actually make a lot of profit. And so on and so forth. So the big one that we actually looked into was exposure. And I'll show you the literature actually shows that there is a lot of interest in exposure. Okay, for example, right here. So here's some literature from 62 all the way to 15. Okay, look at the statements they make in their papers. These are some of the really good papers. Sales are a function of the number of people to whom the product is exposed. Okay, these are verbatim. Okay, I didn't make it up. These are under quotes. What is not seen does not exist for the shopper. Now, I don't buy that completely because if I don't see it but I want ketchup, I'll find it. So I don't completely buy. What I mean, I think what they mean is conditioned on it's not a planned, it's an unplanned purchase. Because planned purchase, you go hunt for it. I always go hunt for it. They make my life miserable, but that's okay. I go hunt for it, right? And the last one is shoppers will only buy what they see. Again, similar, right? This guy, Sorensen, is actually a very big person in retail consulting. He consults with the top companies in the US and actually in Europe as well. So when he says something, it's very empirical. He has actually spoken with a lot of shoppers. It's very interesting stuff. So we picked on this measure, exposure. And that's why the talk title is visual experience. And that's why I made you start thinking about the stimuli. Because when your vision is only one stimuli, there are the 4 others, right? So far, so good? Any questions? Awesome. This is a great crowd. So when you look at product exposure, then you start thinking, okay, so exposure is I want to have that camera exposed to me. Okay, or me exposed to the camera. No, the camera exposed to me, right? Because that's what I want to see that. So if I have to have that, and if I'm dragging my cart and I'm making this smooth one, it's right there. In my, they call it field of regard. Field of vision is this narrow 2-degree path. So I have to see the camera in that 2 degree and then digest the information psychologically. But if I want to just kind of see it, and if I'm making this nice head and eye movement, okay, anything that is scanned is my field of regard. Okay, that's how we are modeling it. So the field of regard has 2 components: the angular limit, how far can I go, and I don't want to go like this, right? Ouch. Right? The older you get, the more ouch you have. Right? So we don't want any ouch effect. We want this very nice and easy with head and the eyeball. So we have mapped it out in human factors. So it just so happens I also have colleagues who are in human factors. So they pointed me to human factors literature. They said there is enough literature in automobile because of the signs, right? When you drive, the signs have to be at certain angles. They are not actually at the perfect angle. If I get a chance to, or you get a chance to bring Kevin Gu, he's actually looking at legibility. I'll not talk about legibility. I don't need to know what is written on that camera, XD cam. I don't need to know that. I just saw something there. I'm happy. It's like color, right? So you know Nike shoes, the swoosh. If you see it, that's enough. You know it's Nike. You don't have to read Nike. So that's what we're talking about, or the color, right? So there are 2 things. You have the angular limit, and then you have the depth. Okay, for a 20/20 vision, if I want to see 25 feet away, a 6-inch, no, half an inch object, that is 25 feet. Anything more than that, I can't see it. I'm talking about the size of the object that you're trying to see. So we have mapped those 2 out. And then what we are trying to evaluate is this better as the shopper is walking through 90 degree, or acute angles, or obtuse angles, or a mix? The area that you need is more. We'll talk about that. I have a slide on that. Yes, sir. So when you start putting stuff non-orthogonal, you start taking too much area. At what point you want to sacrifice some area in some section of the store to kick 200%. That's the key decision, right? So we'll talk about the Walmart store. If you remember, Walmart didn't put every department doesn't have angle. It's only the first few. They entice you, you like it, you go in, and then everything is very standard, right? So it's all about. Yes,
It
sir.
will also depend upon the proportion of, for the merchandise that you sell in a store, the proportion of planned versus unplanned purchase that you are looking at.
Yes, sir.
Because, I mean, I'm just thinking aloud here. If the, see, in a Walmart store, I presume Walmart has sort of evolved over the last 35 years. It's come to a point perhaps where a large part of it is mainly planned. Why not just give them a GPS map for the store? So the guy is walking and he knows, he has that top view plan and he knows where he's going, and the aisles are all sort of, titled, and he knows what path he needs to sort of take to the particular aisle. That will be a far bigger service to the customer in a planned purchase than having visuals, which actually create more clutter in your head.
Good point. If it's Walmart.
Yeah, but if you do it for, I don't know, I mean, I forgot the names of those top-end clothing stores. Maybe
JCPenney
yeah,
or
JCPenney, yeah, JCPenney or Kohl's.
Yeah.
Maybe you might. I mean, people go in and say, okay, what's the new sort of fashion or summer sort of things that have come up. That perhaps may be a place where you may see this having a little bit more.
So we have it across all. We are creating a general model. I'm showing you Walmart because people know Walmart.
Okay.
And the fun part is, yes, my impression was exactly like you. I've actually spoken with the senior vice president of Walmart at Bentonville. They actually do believe everyday low pricing, so that's their motto in pricing. But they have certain sections they purposely are selling it for impulse, like the beauty section. Beauty, you don't go, the ladies will tell you, you don't go with an agenda, I want to buy lipstick today. They drag you to buy a lipstick today. I'll let the ladies talk, okay? I'm not the right person. The ladies will tell you, you don't walk into a store with an agenda, I'm going to buy this high-end lipstick or high-end makeup. You go, you try, you like it, maybe you come next time again before making a commitment, but you buy it. So Walmart, just as an example, that section is a beauty section, which actually the old Walmarts didn't have it, and that was surprising. So that's why I picked Walmart, because Walmart is a very unusual example. Kohl's and JCPenney, it's very normal. So you made an excellent point that yes, in a Walmart type, 90% is planned. Why don't I do that? Trust
They
me.
will be worried about the space. Well, we may have a viewpoint on that.
Yeah.
But if you put it slantingly, the space utilization is less optimal.
Yes,
I
sir.
guess.
Yes, sir.
And that's a problem with Reliance over here. I mean, Reliance started off with far better, far more ergonomically designed stores. And today, if you go into them, it's a dump. It's a dump. I mean, the moment you walk in, you have this huge pile of stuff out there.
Yes.
But that's what the customers over here want.
I don't know. They do that here in the US as well, and people don't like it.
You go to Costco or something, you go to Costco, it's a dump.
Or Sam's Club.
Yeah.
Exactly. Good point. I'm going to actually wait until I talk about space to give you a little perspective. Oh wow, that's loud. So the Walmart example was fantastic. The section that I was showing, I didn't say out loud, but it's the beauty section, which was actually very unique to us ourselves. The examples that we took were Target, and the ones that we took were from Elder BMN and JCPenney. When you walk in, the stuff is very low, angled on the wall, and how does that change? So we're trying to model that piece.
No, but I mean, this is just a hot point or something.
No,
Don't want to derail your
No,
time.
please.
But why not give them I mean, in the world of technology, every customer walks in, give them a tablet with a GPS, and you say, what is it that you're interested in? And people say, shopping for beauty, and it comes out the thing that there's so much of sale in beauty. And then it shows a map to get to the beauty aisle. That would actually good use of technology to get customers of a certain kind move towards a certain aisle. At the same time, you would have optimal utilization of your space within, which is ROI in retail. I mean,
Precisely.
Return on space.
Precisely.
So why not think about that, just as an idea?
So, good point. Now I don't work in that domain, but I have collaborators.
Impulsive marketing thing will go down sharply.
Sorry?
After that, the impulsive marketing thing will go down very sharply if we provide everything to the customer straight away.
That's one counter argument. Another one is there is a customer privacy issue. So I as a customer will not let them know where exactly I'm walking. So that's a big deal in the US. Second, the technology at Walmart, they don't want to spend that much money. It's Walmart, everyday low pricing. So they may be very selective. So what they're doing right now is they're giving you cell phone and they say, if you enable the cell phone and give us every information about you, we will tell you what you bought last time, and on the fly as you're walking through, we'll say that aisle, this one, special deal for you. It still says $2.99, but for you it's $1.99. Only you can buy it.
You can do that on the loyalty. You can
Precisely. Precisely. So as long as you are willing to share that information on your loyalty card or on your GPS, right? So great point. I don't know how much I can talk because I'm not Walmart myself. So I'll share some aspects of it. So fantastic. I'll talk about some space issues as well. Okay. If there are any other further thoughts on that, continue. Okay. Cool. So this is how the human line of sight is, and so we have easy and max head rotation. So we look at it as phi on one side of the walking pathway, measured from the pathway, and then this is the DOE, the depth of vision, which is measured for half an inch object. Okay, so this is all known. So we take that human factors information and say, let's put it in a model. Okay, so let's see. Wow, this started already. Cool. I'll show you a simulator. Hold on one second. Okay, so clicked a couple of them. So these are some. So what happens? Let me give you a perspective here. What is the analytical model going to look like? Okay, so it's a human and its vision, the human walking past static racks, and that's what you're modeling. Okay, if you really think about it, at any given point, it's geometry. Okay, geometry can be worked out. The problem is this geometry now becomes a little complicated when you start walking through it. So at every point, you have to recalculate the geometry, and then the worst part is, I don't have an example here, but for example, if I'm standing right here, and if I look at the geometry of the camera, the professor sitting behind him, I can't see him. He's within my field of regard, but he has been obstructed. So that geometry has to now start looking at the obstruction phenomena. That point is within my field of view, but it's been obstructed. How do you do that analytically? Right? So that is where things become very complicated. So what we did was we kind of built a set of analytical models to begin with, and we said, you know what, we can model this, but for a very specific system, we actually need an algorithm. I'm just going to give you an idea. Here is your DOV there, here is your phi there, and then number of aisles, and so on and so forth. Okay? We said, let's kind of build something more generic. Okay? So what my student came up with is, if I can, okay, good. Okay, so if I don't know how to stop this, let's see, stop it here. Okay, so what we've done is, you take the human and discretize the pathway into 0.1 feet or so. You take the racks and discretize by 0.1 feet or so, and you now start with a double discretization. You start algorithmically calculating what gets seen, the blue dots, what does not get seen, the red dots, and then what gets obstructed. So instantaneously, you can calculate at any given point, I don't see anything. For example, right here, I don't see anything. But over the entire pathway, I saw 54 feet, roughly, which are 54 points at 1 feet apart. I saw that much. Okay? So this tells you now that if you are at a Walmart and trying to promote something new, or Kroger, as a matter of fact, they acquired a company called Fred Meyer's Jewelry. They're having terrible time with their jewelry because the jewelry section is put in the middle of the store. So people from the front end, they don't see it. So if they walk on the outside, they'll never go there. So they're not having sales. So the idea was, Kroger is interested in, can I do something where I can put angled aisles and make the person at the entrance see the jewelry section from right there and open up things? Or can I move the jewelry section up here, just a few angled aisles, and then make them move in so that they hit the jewelry? And if they hit jewelry, jewelry is all about impulse. Make sense? Very high margin impulse. So those are some ideas that they are trying to flirt with. Okay, so far so good. So algorithmically you can calculate. Okay. So what we did then was we built a simple. So let me get through the graph first. On the x-axis you have the rack angle theta. The norm is 90. Remember. Okay. So anything less than 90, they are acute. Anything more than 90, they are obtuse, as I'm walking through. And here is the y-axis, which is exposure, which is in linear feet of rack perimeter that I actually saw, unobstructed. So far, so good. So if you look at this 90, it so far has the lowest exposure, best space utilization though. We'll talk about it on the next slide. Okay, so that's 90 degrees. This is the exposure you get, about 50, in this particular example, 54 feet. You change it and you say, okay, I'm going to just move it to, let's say, 45 degrees to my field of view. I suddenly get a pretty big, decent spike on it. If I go on the obtuse side, I don't get it because it's all unidirectional, by the way. There is also a bidirectional effect, I'll talk about it. So as you walk in just one direction, obtuse angles are not that great unless you really make them very obtuse. But acute angles are really nice, especially this 30-35 range for a specific phi, okay, 45 degree. It's really powerful. And in all our research, as we have done, angles about 25 to 40 degrees tend to be the optimal when it comes to maximizing exposure only, not space. Okay, space is a different thing. It's already known, 90 degrees, and it's actually on a slide later. I'll show you that. Okay, so first of all, let's understand this is exposure. Now again, let's back up and say, so what is exposure? Exposure is a binary variable for a location, 0 or 1. A location is either exposed or not exposed. I don't care at this point how long it was exposed. So if I walk and I see Dr. Roy just as a flash, yeah, he was exposed, but it didn't register because I need to see him for a couple of seconds to be able to register, right? So it's something called as conditional exposure. And how do you do that? Well, you can map it as intensity of exposure, which is for how long a certain point was seen. So if you have the shopper walking past a series of racks, I can actually find out how long each point was seen on a gray scale, where white means never seen, and then as you increase the intensity up to black, always seen. And then shades of gray. Make sense? So what you see here is what? Oh wow, I'm exposed. Sure, that's good, but hey, come on. I don't even see them enough. So really, do you count them as exposed? Well, mathematically 0, 1, yes. Realistically, no. So then how do you do that? So that's why we have intensity as a measure. And I'll show you the video and we'll see some more. Okay, so it's a duration of number of steps. And we have a duration in half a second to 4.3 seconds. Okay, so if you really look at it both together, we have a combined graph. These are all the rack angles. You can go up to 180, 180 is 0. Each one, the height is the exposure, 0, 1, and the color intensity is the intensity of exposure. Okay, so here is 90, okay, pretty low, but pretty intense wherever it's seen, right? Half or more of it is exposed. You see 0 and you say, oh geez, wow, I am decently exposed and everything is pretty much highly intense. What is a 0 degree? I'm walking and the racks are parallel to me. Well, then everything on the rack I'm going to see it, right? Including the end cap. 30 degrees, I just showed you 30 degrees is the best. Well, look at the best. Let's be modest here. Best does not mean really good, because what it says is maximizing exposure does not necessarily mean maximizing intensity. And if you really look into consumer research, they'll talk about it. They'll say, well, you not only have to make a product exposed, but it has to be exposed for a couple of seconds before it registers. There's an action perception phenomena, so perceive and then act, which is buying. They won't buy until they see it for some time and it registers. Make sense? There's a lot of interesting research in that, empirically driven. So again, gist of the story, we have analytical models, we have computational models, we can calculate exposure for every rack, we can calculate intensity for every rack angle. So far so good? Everybody? Okay. Okay, I'll show you the space in a couple more slides. What happens when it's bidirectional? So now you're walking this way and then later, so some fraction of people, alpha, walk this way and another fraction walk the other way. Most aisles are bidirectional. So what happens in that sense? So we actually have for phi 90, which is what? I make slightly bigger head movements, 90 degrees. Okay? And so alpha 1 means unidirectional. Alpha 0.75 meaning 0.75% of people walking this way, 25% the other way, and then 50-50. Okay? So if you look at that, 90 degrees is still the lowest. It's actually with reference to 90. There is a pretty decent section here. Okay, what it tells you is, let's be modest here, right? It says For phi 90, putting rack angles at 90 is okay. There is nothing wrong about it. There are alternate optimal solutions all the way back. It's okay, but it's still the same with respect to 90. Okay? But when you, that's a shopper who does this, right? When you have a shopper who does very light movements like this, when you do that, do you know when you do this versus do this? Fast, when you're walking fast. When you're walking very leisurely, you have time to go and scan. When you're walking fast, you don't have time to scan this way, you scan this way. Make sense? This is psychology taught us. I'm not a psychologist. The psychology faculty told me, well, if you increase the speed, your angle will decrease. Yes, that's a good point, a logical point. So we did the analysis with 45. Now here, things change. Yes, sir?
What is the effect of the disturbances? So you're walking with kids versus you're walking alone?
We have not been able to model that yet. It's a good point.
Because there are a lot of disturbances, right?
Yes, there is a lot of disturbance on not just because of your kids, because of what you just started seeing, and I like that shirt, and I'm watching that shirt, and then everything gone, right? So that is what we are modeling in the VR. I'll show you that. So in this particular modeling framework, we have modeled an upper bound on exposure and intensity, which says, as you're walking, it's all clean. You yourself and the racks, you look at the rack obstruction, but otherwise, you're actually doing a scan and a fast perpetual scan. We don't shop like that. So it's like within a move you have scanned completely. Nobody shops like that. But that gives us an upper bound where we can say, now that I have an upper bound, I can go to the VR, actually have humans there, tease out the factor that gives us a realistic estimate, and then present the analytical model so that the retailers don't have to worry about doing empirical work. Excellent question. So we don't have that. We will soon have it if I come back next year. I'll show you that. So again, with phi 45, 30 degrees are better, and then it gradually decreases with bidirectional. So bidirectional is pretty low. Actually, there is a line here. I don't know why it doesn't show. It shows up here. There's a third line here by the bottom. Okay, so moving on. So acute and obtuse angles are good, and then shopper traffic impacts best angle. But what is the impact on space? Going back to the question earlier. Okay, very careful, okay? 2 y-axis. So angles here, rack angles, space in square feet, aspect ratio. Do you guys know aspect ratio? Length to width ratio, the shape. So that's why it says area and then the shape. You can have multiple shapes for the same area, right? So the area is the bat. My student used to call it, it's a bat figure. Bat look like that, right? The bat, the bird animal, right? The bat figure. So 90 degrees is the lowest, which we always knew. Anybody who knows anything about geometry will say, well, orthogonal is perfect. And as you move away from it, you're going to start spending. So, too much. So how much are you willing to spend on this curve in terms of lost area versus on the other graph, increase in exposure? Make sense? Make sense? This one is also very weird looking, aspect ratio. The aspect ratio, length to width ratio, L over W, is going to be 1, right, for a square. As you move away from the square, you stretch it, we call it short and long, or short and wide, and then long and skinny. Those are 2 different ones, right? Your aspect ratio changes. It becomes really weird layout. You don't want those layouts in any facility per se. So those are independent analysis, and in our optimization model, we actually merge them. So I'll show you that. I won't go into details, but we merge both of them. Okay? So far, so good. So 90 degrees, low on space, but low on exposure. 35, 30, 40 degrees, high on space, but also high on exposure. When you have high space requirement, which means what? Either for a given space, you can't fit your SKUs in it, products in it, or to fit them, you need to increase space. Either way you see it, right? So those are the criteria that we need to worry about. Okay, so a real example, again, we are taking the beauty section only, which is very, very unique to Walmart. This one is the wine section, we found out, and these are some dairy products here on the corner, which are very unique. Walmart store traditionally is never like that. Those who know Walmart, this is actually a new Walmart store, new in the sense 8 years old, that new, okay? Walmart stores have been around. And these things, you never see it. It's only in the new stores. So we're modeling this, okay? This particular section. And now I'll show you how our models apply to the real world. Okay, so that's that area. That's the beauty section. Shoppers walking this way, shoppers walking that way. These are, palettes in the middle, okay? So she goes and applies her algorithm by blocking all of them and says, here's what I would see based on our models. Take a careful look, okay? This is the angle stuff, high exposure, 41.4 feet, high space, okay, aspect ratio 1.1, but look at that intensity. It goes in, but you don't really see a lot. Here's a 90 degree, okay, or here's a 90 degree, another one. Look at that, very little exposure, but whatever is exposed is very intense. Okay, so now you have a choice, right? Okay, as a customer is walking in, I know I do not want to put angled aisles everywhere in my store. Bad idea. You also know maybe I should not have only orthogonal everywhere in my store either. I have select group of products like this, like JCPenney or Kohl's, where only for certain areas where there is most traffic, I'll keep the aisles different looking and make them feel comfortable so that they walk in or they buy more. I put all the promotional products there, high impulse, get their revenue, and then rest, I'll recover the lost space, okay? I'll recover the lost space by putting everything else 90 degrees. So if you really look at it, actually what Walmart did seems like pretty interesting. This is the only area where they messed up the aisle section, or messed around, I would say. Not messed up, messed around. Everything else is pretty orthogonal. Make sense? Yes, sir. Again, let's not talk about Walmart.
It's a quick thought on
Yes,
this. Would it be interesting to compare this particular layout with one where you force all customers to go through angular, or what you call the 180 degree tunnel, that they have to walk through that, which is where the impulse stuff is.
Yeah.
And then move into the planned purchase section, which is what all the other aisles are.
Fantastic question.
I mean, is that something that has been researched? I don't know what impact it has on.
Now, this is where they do. So if you go to, not necessarily Walmart, but some smaller stores.
So you force them to go through
You
the
force
impulse
them.
section before they come to the plan section.
Yes.
And in the process, you still have either 90 degree or 180 degrees, which is maximum utilization of space.
Yes.
You don't get into this spot of bother about space being sort of lost.
Absolutely.
I don't know whether that is always possible. It probably depends upon the percentage of the impulse to planned purchase
Very true.
products.
Very true. So you make a very interesting argument. What's the end result of this? The end result is to increase sales, if that is the point. Well, what kind of a store are you? Because Walmart, for that much, I don't think so they're going to be interested in my models. For JCPenney, Kohl's, probably a lot more, because we're talking about that. You make a very nice point though. Some of the stores have actually gone away from it, but they used to do it. When you walk in, they purposely put, so when you walk in, you have two choices. You go right or left. They purposely put high pallets with promotional items. So you're only interested in looking at them and you buy and you basically maneuver here because they don't even show you the other one. So they drag you on the left side or right side and make you walk behind. Some customers have shown frustration, and so more and more stores are going away from it. But yes, you have a great point. I don't know of any modeling though. That's a very fantastic point. But in practice, I've seen it. So that's a great question. But your points are well taken, that the models that we are using cannot be just simply applied to any store. You have to really map out what kind of a store you are. Well taken. Okay, so back to my stuff, because then Dr. Roy will say time up. I want to show you some stuff, okay? So I'm going to move on. I'm going to show you, so this is what we observed, and now the point is, so what would happen when space is constrained? Every time until here, we said, I don't care about space. I know I can calculate, but I don't care about space. Now I say, look, you have this bounding box, and I'm going to give you that. You must design this. I'll give you some criteria. So space is fixed, okay? Then you have an optimization problem because you have a constraint, right? And a hard constraint. So then we started looking at that. So okay, so maybe this is the area, and so this small section here, or this small section here, or that small section here, you're given exactly that area, length by width, and you say, go in there, I'll tell you how many customers on average come from this direction and that direction, and I'll tell you to maximize exposure, what should that look like? That's the question. You cannot increase the area. or decrease area. That's the area, okay? So that brings to a new kind of a problem structure. We call it the retail rack layout problem. So in the retail sense, in the rack layout, and the main goal is the optimal placement of rectangular racks within a constrained space in order to maximize total exposure. So far so good? So you're trying to find the optimal theta to maximize E, okay, in a constrained space. Okay. So again, in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all of those, but basically the idea is, should you have like this, if this is the area, or should you have that section like that, or should you have the same section like this? Does that make sense? You see the variety here? Again, be very careful when to use models, right? Models tell you something. Your business sense will tell you when to do and where to do, okay? So that's what you're trying to do. So I'm going to skip a bunch of math. I promise I'll not show you the math model, so there is no math model, it's just the words here. Okay, there is a math model on the last page, but I'm not going to show you. Okay. So basically bidirectional exposure subject to a bunch of constraints. This is a very non-linear, non-closed form, very hard problem to solve, so we use heuristics to solve it. But basically what we are trying to do is this. Given the W and L, so W and L, how many columns do I need or would I need? And in each column, how many racks should I place? And in each column, those racks, at what angle they should be. Make sense? So W1, W2, 2 columns or just W. Theta for that and the number of racks. Does that make sense? And by clearly simply mapping out, you say, oh, if I put them angled, I'm actually going to lose some display. And that we're going to calculate. We're going to show you the loss of display, okay?
You are increasing exposure for constrained space.
For constrained space.
Then you might end up minimizing the amount of commodity that you put.
Show you. I'll show you, absolutely. Well, I'm glad he's thinking 5 slides ahead. That at least keeps me on my toes. So here's a system that we analyzed, 44 by 44 feet and some parameters. So here's an example of the display loss. We call it display loss. So the display is the total perimeter that I could have in my 90-degree formation. That's the max, right? How much am I willing to give up from that? How much am I going to gain on exposure? Does that make sense? Everybody with me so far? How much am I willing to give up from 90? If I can do that, then only I'm going to crank up the exposure. Otherwise, I know 90 has certain exposure. It makes sense? So that is what we are trying to do here. So let's see. This is the increase in exposure from 90. Baseline is 90, okay? So this is 90. This is the line. So 90, all of these guys are increasing from 90, but look where they are. 20 to 40% give up on the display on this very specific example. Okay, data changes, answers will change. Let it sink in, okay? So take this example. Okay, about 225, 230% increase from 90, but then that line drops down to about 25% of your products you'll have to lose it. That's a lot. But we are talking about a small area. So 25% in a small area is not that lot. And if you start thinking from this perspective, okay, so 25% of the products, meaning 25% display, am I losing actual products or am I losing inventory of the existing products? I let you decide. I'm basically a modeler. I'm telling you as a retailer, do you want to remove all 25% unique products but maintain the inventory of the current products? Or you say everybody has 25% reduced inventory on the shelf. So then you incur a cost of replenishment. Okay, you have to replenish it, but all the products are still there. 25% inventory has decreased. Am I making sense? I don't make the call. That's for the retailer to make the call. I'm a modeler. Again, remember, as a modeler, my responsibility is to give them suggestions on a gamut of things. They are in the business. They have to make the call. I don't make their calls.
They will ask you, what will be exposure to sales?
Exposure to sales.
Exposure to sales.
There is a model.
And display loss to sales loss function. And then you would optimize with both of them to come up with the right sort of.
Precisely. So there is one step after this which says, so I didn't No, you are so far in our thought process, which is amazing. So going back to Professor's question, okay? We are, no. I must finish because you have a great question. So you have the skeleton that we are designing, and we say, this skeleton gives you more exposure. The other side of the coin is, the retailer says, how much money am I going to make? To match them, there is a middle step called shelf allocation. Shelf allocation problem in retailing is saying, I have an assortment, I need to put these products on the shelves, on the racks, such that together they maximize sale. There is a lot of research in there, but we don't solve that problem, because what we are saying is, these guys who have solved it, they have assumed that the racks are all 90 degrees. And what we are telling them is, no, sometimes when you tilt them a little bit, you actually get more exposed locations on the shelf, so you can put more products on the shelf and might get a bigger kick. So that's our next PhD student working on it, on the shelf allocation.
Psychology would have some model on exposure to sales function.
There
How much selling can happen as you increase exposure to the goods, right? I'm sure there's something in, I'm not a student of consumer psychology as much, but I bet there is, otherwise there's no point in sort of measuring exposure or exposure increase.
Correct.
So you would get a return on exposure.
Correct.
And a return or a loss on merchandise lost in not,
Correct.
and then you would probably try to make a trade-off between the return on exposure to the loss due to display.
I must come next year.
Sorry.
No, my PhD student right now is building an optimization model whose objective is plan plus impulse. And there are equations where you have to put in some kind of an exposure or visibility factor.
Now, plan plus impulse is a separate dimension. That would depend, that would drive the elasticity of your exposure functions.
It
in
does.
Plan purchase, exposure elasticity is zero.
Exactly. So we have that.
Yeah.
So
no, but that's a different dimension. Here I'm saying that you would actually have a function between sales and exposure. Agnostic to the elasticity function. If you need that, and then you plant in the proportion of planned commodities and impulse commodities to find out your weighted average elasticity, that would give you the impact of exposure to sales. But then you will have to compensate for merchandise loss.
So what we have seen is the shelf allocation that does the impulse buy, they use a flat visibility factor, and they don't tell where to get that from. There is another modeling feature, Irian's paper, where they say, if you tell me there is a plan and there is impulse, I can tell you by elasticity, here's a kind of a empirically derived function, but you need to derive the parameters. We are using that approach. So then it looks at, you walk in and it's planned, so it's planned. But if you start dropping the inventory, then you are going to hit on the planned. But when you drop this, you're going to increase the exposure of impulse, so you're going to gain some on the impulse. At what point there is a sweet spot? So that is where we are going in that direction. We have a model, but I don't have results to show you. So, and I purposely avoided that, but great thought process. Okay, so in the interest of time, I'm just going to show you that highest point versus that give up, right? So there is, and as they say, there is no free lunch, right? You take one, you give one. At what point you want to take a lot versus give up a little bit, right? Okay. So here's what we came up with. This is from our optimization models. Thank you. Well, we'll go one at a time. So this one is for phi 45. So you're walking at a brisk pace and you can only see so much. Your field of regard, which is the DOV, the depth of vision, it is so far out that it penetrates. So this is the area I want to model, okay? I'm walking in the middle of this area, and I can see everything. That's what it means. That's what it means by penetrating. It penetrates through. So far, so good. Versus, let's say this was doubled, or my eyesight was not 20/20. It only penetrates half. Two cases, correct? First case is it penetrates through. Then in that case, you have kind of different types of designs that emerge. A one-column design, I call it one column, where all the columns are about 35, 40 degrees, versus a three-column design, which looks like this. Pretty interesting. Some are at angle, and then the rest, we don't want it at angle, so they actually say, well, you two guys have given up so much space, I'm going to recover some by putting rack 90 degrees. Does that make sense? That's a trade-off, right? Still, look at the kick. 227% bidirectional, okay? Two ways, 133%. If it penetrates. If it does not penetrate, then the design starts shifting. Okay, not a lot of kick, still pretty decent, 67, 66%. Here's the design. The section that penetrates, is all angled. The section which is not penetrating is all 90. You see what I'm saying? Why would you change something when visually it's not going to impact? Well, keep it at 90. It's the one that makes the impact. You keep them at angles, okay? Acute angles or so. So far, so good? Cool. When you change the aspect ratio, I don't have a nice square or version. I have a very weird looking aspect ratio of 3.36, meaning length is 3 times the width. If you look at it, then you actually get a lot of kick. I don't have the exact percentages, but it's all one column and all are angled. Okay? Versus you look at this design. The moment it goes deeper, at some point, you will stop seeing beyond. And after that, everything should be by default 90 because it's logical. It's before that, can I change the angle and get the kick? Making sense here? So it all depends on, am I creating this location? Is it a square location right closer? Is it a longer location? Is it at a location at the corner edge which is kind of elongated, or is it more this way because I want them to walk this way? I don't know. It all depends on what the layout designer says, where do I want to put this in. In fact, our attempt is to take this and put it into a software which says, pick 3-4 locations and redesign, and it will then run an agent-based simulation where it will put in, or a Monte Carlo, put in a bunch of people through, and it starts giving you a heat map. And then you say, oh, here is a sales lift if I can multiply by sales. Make sense? So what have we learned? And I want to show you the video before I get out. So factoring the human FOR can substantially increase store exposure. Right? This is how we see versus how the designer sees. Higher exposure means ease of search, low frustration, as you guys know about it. Exposure-based layouts tend to be quite different from traditional layouts. I showed you some examples mathematically. We didn't talk a lot about conditional exposure. So conditional exposure is exposure for at least 2 seconds. Otherwise, it's not exposed. Then the layouts become very different, more acute. And then, what is the effect of rack height? Okay, I only showed you a 2-dimensional. If you notice, everything is 2-dimensional. My PhD student right now has 3-dimensional algorithms for not just rectangular, I didn't show you, curved racks. So there are some new rack manufacturers who have come up with curved racks with curved end caps. So then the question is, what angle should this curved rack be? What height should it be? And what should be the angle of curvature in itself? Because the more curvature it has, you don't see inner surface because it's curved. The front portion hides the back portion. So it's called self-obstruction versus a flat area. So these are the things that he's evaluating right now. And hopefully I'll have that. So let me show you, so read these questions as I pull up. Read a couple of these questions. Okay. How would these designs hold up when you and me are walking through the system, okay? And again, I gave you examples of shopper. Think about a patron in a museum. You're walking in a museum. Your target is not to buy something. You want to see something. The visual experience in a museum is primary. So shopper is something that we just took an example because we saw it, but museum is like a perfect example. At an airport, go to a Delhi airport or Bombay airport or Chicago's O'Hare airport. Very complicated. You have to read the signs to get to a point. So the point over there is not buying anything, not having a fun feel. It's about navigation. Can you navigate to your point quickly? Okay. So human in 3D space. Okay. So just a couple videos and we'll basically call it off. Okay. So that's basically me walking through our 3D environment. Racks at 30 degrees. I'm wearing a head tracker. It knows exactly where my head is moving, so it gives me a complete time history of my head. The racks are all 3-dimensional, set up at 30 degrees, about 20 aisles long. And then there is this 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch square block that you have to see. And we have hidden them everywhere. And now you have to find it. Okay, some we have purposely hidden in such a way that they're not hidden, purposely put in such a way that you should be able to find them because our model says you should be able to. Then our model says some you may be able to, so we are mapping that, and some for sure you should not be, and we are mapping them. So model says for a 30 degree, here is exactly the intensity, and for those, this is how the model predicts the behavior would be. Now we take it into a three-dimensional. This is actually 27 LED LCD screens, 9 flat, 9 this way, and 9 this way. So it creates a three-dimensional cave, right? And so when you are in there, your entire field of vision is covered in the cave. So you are detached from the real world because you can't see anything but the screens. And that is where we put the racks in. Okay? So here's another example. This is actually 135. Okay? Look at how much movement of my head I'm having. I'll go back to 30 and you'll see again. Okay, look at how so these racks are going away from me, right? 135.
Right.
Okay, look how far I go. I go beyond my 90, and I'm actually kind of going back because the racks are going that direction. When you see an object, you speak out loud. I saw right aisle number 5, so we can record it. Okay, see the movement of the head, and then I'm going to show you again the 30-degree, and you will see a very light movement. Look at the head movement now. How much?
To right.
What does it tell you? 30 degrees is more amenable to how you see the world. And second, if you are going to walk fast, it's even better. Because while walking fast, you're going to see narrow field. At that time, 30 is best. So if you enter a store with an agenda and you put beauty section or something right at an angle, you still will see it. And then you slow down. Say, oh geez, I like something. And you stop. Making sense here? Okay. Again, all said and done. As I said, and I forget the professor's name, but as he pointed out, if we were to do this in a retail section, we must convert this into sales. But I may not want to only do it for retail. I may want to show it in a museum, which is what Kevin Yu is doing right now in Louisville. The university actually has a small museum, and the museum director is trying to figure out how can I increase the experience of the patrons, who are students, faculty, or whoever it is, walking through the museum. Where should I locate those objects? Because those are very free-flowing objects. There are no racks, right? It's on a pedestal or hanging or on the wall. And how do I put them in a way where as they're walking through it, at any given point when they go to one object, they see more of such enticing objects, which we call cross-visibility, from a point to another point, rather than through the pathway. If you walked here and say, I like it, nice. Oh, I see that, so I'm going to walk. And you drag them all the way in. Because for a museum, that's what they want. They want them to have a good experience. Making sense? So we are looking at museum at that point. So that's where our research was funded under cyber, which is computer science, physical, which is us, and social, which is psychology. There's a group at NSF which funded this project because they felt like models will not work only psychology will not work, and with those two, you still have to test it, so you need computer science, the VR. So that's how they funded us. So I lead the team essentially, but that's so great learning experience. The more and more I do, I feel like models are so limited because until you have the humans go through that, you really haven't tested it. So very fascinating stuff. Okay, so I guess with that, I'm going to just call it for now. We ran out of time, or maybe. So if there are any questions, I'll let him decide if we can have a couple more.
If you have quick questions, we can take something now. If not, I'm sure you will hang out for a little bit more time after the talk. Let's give a round of applause to our speaker.
Thank you.